Steelers Nation, stop everything you're doing right now because what I'm about to tell you could completely reshape the future of this franchise. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers. We're talking about his future. And we're talking about a statement he just made that has sent shockwaves through the entire NFL. If you love the black and gold, if you bleed Pittsburgh football, you need to smash that subscribe button right now and join this family. We're on a mission to become the #1 destination for Steelers news, and we can't do it without you. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single update because things are moving fast. All right, let's dive into this absolute bombshell. So, here's the situation. We're days away from the most important game of the season. Steelers versus Ravens. Win, and we're in the playoffs. Lose, and we're sitting at home watching everyone else compete for the Lombardi Trophy. The pressure is at an all-time high. The intensity couldn't be more real. And right in the middle of all this chaos, Aaron Rodgers, the future Hall of Famer who came to Pittsburgh on a 1-year prove-it deal, just said something that nobody saw coming. He didn't announce retirement. He didn't say goodbye. Instead, he opened the door. He left the possibility hanging in the air. And now Steelers Nation is left wondering what comes next. Let me set the stage for you because this story has layers. When Aaron Rodgers signed with Pittsburgh before this season, most people thought this was it. This was the farewell tour, the legendary quarterback riding off into the sunset in black and gold. He's 42 years old, which in quarterback years is practically ancient. He'd spent 2 decades in the league, won MVP awards, broke records, and cemented himself as one of the all-time greats. Coming to Pittsburgh felt like the perfect ending to an incredible career. Play for a storied franchise. Play for a coach like Mike Tomlin who demands excellence. Play in a city where football isn't just a sport, it's a religion. Everything pointed to this being the final chapter. But then something interesting started happening. As the season went on, Rodgers didn't just show up to collect a paycheck. He actually played like he still had something to prove. He showed flashes of that elite arm talent. He made throws that reminded everyone why he's considered one of the best to ever do it. And more importantly, he brought a swagger and confidence to the locker room that this team desperately needed. The Steelers weren't just surviving with Rodgers under center. They were competing. They were believing. And now, with everything on the line this Sunday, Rodgers is making it clear that maybe, just maybe, he's not ready to hang it up just yet. Here's exactly what he said, and listen closely because every word matters. Rodgers sat down with reporters this week and he addressed the elephant in the room. His future. And instead of giving the typical vague non-answer that most athletes give, he got real. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here because I want to give you the essence of it, that he's 42 years old, he's on a 1-year deal, and when this season ends, he'll be a free agent. That gives him options if he still wants to play. Think about that for a second. Options. He didn't say he's done. He didn't say this is definitely the end. He said he'll have options. That's a guy who's keeping the door wide open. Now, why is this such a big deal? Because it represents a complete shift from what we've been hearing all year long. Go back to June. Rodgers went on the Pat McAfee show, which if you follow the NFL, you know is basically where all the major news drops happen these days. And on that show, Rodgers talked about legacy. He talked about finishing his career the right way. He mentioned playing 20 years in the league and how special it would be to end things with a franchise like Pittsburgh. He talked about what it means to play for Mike Tomlin, to play in front of Steelers fans, to wear black and gold. Everything he said pointed to this being the grand finale, the last dance, the victory lap before retirement. But something changed, something shifted, and I think we all know what it is. When you're winning, when you're competing, when you're still making plays that matter, it's really hard to walk away. Football gets in your blood. The competition becomes addictive. And for a competitor like Aaron Rodgers, someone who has spent his entire adult life chasing perfection on the football field, the idea of walking away while you can still sling it? That's tough. That's really tough. And based on what he just said, it sounds like he's not quite ready to make that call yet. Let's talk about what Rodgers has actually done on the field this season, because this isn't just some nostalgic story about a veteran hanging on too long. The man has legitimately produced. Through 17 weeks of football, Aaron Rodgers has thrown for over 3,000 yards. He's got 23 touchdown passes against only 7 interceptions. Read that again. 23 touchdowns, 7 picks. That's a ratio that most quarterbacks in their prime would be thrilled with, and this man is doing it at 42 years old. That's not just good, that's elite efficiency. What makes those numbers even more impressive is the context. This isn't some high-powered offensive system with weapons everywhere. The Steelers have had their share of injuries this year. They've dealt with inconsistency on the offensive line. They've had games where the run game completely disappeared. And through all of that, Rodgers found a way to make it work. He made the throws when they mattered most. He protected the football. He put the team in position to win games. That's veteran leadership. That's what you get when you bring in a guy who's seen everything the league can throw at him. And now we arrive at Sunday, Steelers versus Ravens. If you're a Steelers fan, you know what this rivalry means. This isn't just another game on the schedule. This is blood. This is hate. This is two franchises that absolutely cannot stand each other going to war one more time. The AFC North title is on the line. A playoff berth is on the line. The entire season comes down to this one game. And for Aaron Rodgers, this might be the most significant game he's played in years. Think about his playoff drought. Rodgers hasn't been to the postseason since 2021. For a player of his caliber, that's an eternity. That's 3 full seasons of watching January football from his couch. 3 years of seeing other quarterbacks compete for championships while he's on the outside looking in. That eats at you. That drives you. And now he's got a chance to change that narrative. 1 win over Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and Rodgers is back in the playoffs. Back in the conversation, back in the hunt. You think that doesn't matter to him? Of course it does. It matters more than anything. But here's the other factor we have to discuss, and Rodgers himself brought it up: the physical element. At 42, it's not about whether you can still throw the football. Rodgers clearly still has that elite arm talent. It's about recovery. It's about how your body feels on Monday morning after taking hits all day Sunday. It's about whether the bumps and bruises heal as fast as they used to. It's about whether you can get through a full season without something breaking down. Rodgers acknowledged this himself. He said the biggest factor in his decision will be how he feels physically. Can he get through this final stretch and feel good? Can his body hold up? Because if it can't, then none of the other stuff matters. And honestly, that's the most real answer you could ask for. We've seen too many great players hang on too long. We've seen legends become shadows of themselves because they couldn't let go. Rodgers seems self-aware enough to understand that if his body is telling him it's time to stop, then it's time to stop. But if he gets through these next few weeks and feels strong, feels healthy, feels like he can do this for another year, then all bets are off. Then we're having a very different conversation come February and March. So what does all of this mean for the Pittsburgh Steelers? That's the million-dollar question. From an organizational standpoint, this creates some fascinating possibilities and some serious decisions that need to be made. Let's say Rodgers leads the team to a playoff win on Sunday. Let's say they make a run in January. Let's say he looks good doing it, stays healthy, and decides he wants to come back for 1 more year. Do the Steelers bring him back? Do they run it back with a 43-year-old quarterback? Or do they thank him for his service and move on to the future? There are legitimate arguments on both sides. On one hand, if Rodgers is still playing at a high level and wants to return, why wouldn't you bring him back? You know what you're getting. You know he can run the offense. You know he commands respect in the locker room. You know Mike Tomlin trusts him. That's valuable. That's not something you just toss aside. Plus, finding a franchise quarterback is the hardest thing to do in the NFL. If you already have a guy who can play winning football, even if he's older, that's worth considering. On the other hand, the clock is ticking. Rodgers isn't getting younger. Every additional year is a gamble. What if his body breaks down 3 games into next season? What if the production falls off a cliff? What if you're stuck in quarterback purgatory again, watching another veteran decline while missing opportunities to develop the future? These are real concerns. And for a franchise that's always thinking long-term, always planning ahead, there's something to be said for making a clean break and starting fresh. Then there's the draft angle. If the Steelers decide to move on from Rodgers, whether it's his choice or theirs, they're immediately in quarterback search mode. And depending on where they pick, there could be some really intriguing options available. Do they trade up for one of the top prospects? Do they take a swing on a guy in the 2nd or 3rd round? Do they look at the free agent market and try to find a veteran bridge option while they develop someone young? All of these paths are on the table, and all of them come with risk. But here's another possibility that I find really interesting. What if both things happen? What if Rodgers comes back on a 1-year deal and the Steelers also draft a quarterback? You could have Rodgers mentor the rookie, let the young guy learn the system without the pressure of starting immediately, and create a natural transition plan. Rodgers has done this before. He sat behind Brett Favre. He knows what it's like to develop while watching a legend operate. Maybe he'd be open to passing that knowledge along. Maybe he sees value in helping shape the next generation. That could be the best of both worlds. From a fan perspective, I've got to be honest with you. Watching Aaron Rodgers in a Steelers uniform has been a wild experience. When the signing first happened, there was skepticism. There was excitement, sure, but also questions. Can he still play? Will he fit the culture? Is this just a desperate move by a team trying to stay relevant? And you know what? It hasn't been perfect. There have been games where the offense struggled. There have been moments where you wondered if this was really the right move. But overall, it's been special. It really has. Rodgers brought something to this team that was missing. He brought calmness under pressure. He brought leadership in the huddle. He brought the belief that no game is ever out of reach. You could see it in how the other players responded to him. You could hear it in their interviews. They trusted him. They believed in him. And for a team that had been searching for quarterback stability for years, that mattered. That made a difference. So whether Sunday is his final game in black and gold or just another chapter in the story, it's been worth it. Now let's talk about the Ravens game specifically because this is going to be an absolute war. Baltimore comes in playing their best football of the season. Lamar Jackson is doing Lamar Jackson things, making plays with his arm and his legs that shouldn't be possible. Their defense is flying around making life miserable for opposing offenses. And the rivalry factor? It's off the charts. These two teams do not like each other. There's history, there's animosity, there's genuine bad blood. Adding the playoff implications and the potential Rodgers farewell storyline just cranks everything up to 11. For Rodgers, this is the ultimate stage. Prime time, division rival, everything on the line. This is the kind of game that legends are made of. If he goes into Baltimore and outduels Lamar Jackson, if he makes the throws when they matter most, if he leads the Steelers to victory and a playoff berth, that becomes a defining moment of his entire career. It's not about the stats. It's about rising to the occasion when the pressure is at its highest. And if there's one thing we know about Aaron Rodgers, it's that he's built for these moments. But let's also acknowledge the flip side. If the Steelers lose, if the season ends on Sunday, then we're probably watching Rodgers play his last game. And honestly, that would be heartbreaking. Not just for him, but for everyone who appreciates what he's meant to the game of football. This is a first-ballot Hall of Famer. This is someone who redefined the quarterback position. This is a legend. And having his career end in a loss would feel incomplete somehow. So the stakes couldn't be higher on multiple levels. What I find most fascinating about all of this is the human element. We talk about athletes like they're robots sometimes, like they can just flip a switch and walk away when the time comes. But it's not that simple. These guys have been playing football since they were kids. It's been their entire identity for decades. The routine, the competition, the camaraderie, the adrenaline rush of game day. You don't just turn that off because you hit a certain age or made enough money. The emotional attachment runs deep. And for Rodgers, who has given his entire adult life to this game, the idea of walking away has to be incredibly difficult. I think that's why his recent comments are so telling. He's not ready to say goodbye. He's not ready to close the door completely. He wants to see how this plays out. He wants to see how his body feels. He wants to see if the fire is still burning. And depending on what happens Sunday, depending on how the next few weeks unfold, he'll make his decision. That's as honest as it gets. That's a competitor being real about where he's at mentally and physically. For Steelers Nation, the emotions are complicated. Part of you wants to see Rodgers ride off into the sunset as a champion. Part of you wants him to come back and give it another shot. Part of you wants to move on and start building for the future. All of those feelings can coexist. All of those perspectives are valid. This is what makes sports so captivating. These decisions matter. They impact real people. They shape franchises for years to come. And we all get to be part of the conversation. So as we count down the hours until Sunday, as we prepare for Steelers versus Ravens, as we get ready for one of the most important games in recent memory, remember what's at stake: a playoff berth, an AFC North title, a rivalry renewed, and potentially the final chapter of a Hall of Fame career. Aaron Rodgers has kept the door open. He hasn't retired. He hasn't said goodbye. He's giving himself options. And depending on what happens under the lights this weekend, we might see him in black and gold again next season. Or we might be saying farewell to a legend. Either way, I'll be watching. I'll be cheering. I'll be riding every emotional wave with all of you, because that's what it means to be part of Steelers Nation. We live and die with this team. We invest our hearts and emotions into every game. And this Sunday, we get to witness something special. So make sure you're locked in. Make sure you're ready. And make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because we're going to be breaking down every single moment as it happens. Now I want to hear from you, Steelers Nation. Should Pittsburgh bring Aaron Rodgers back if he wants to return? Or is it time to turn the page and start fresh with a new quarterback? Do you trust him for another year? Or do you think the team needs to get younger and build for the long term? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Let's get a real conversation going. And while you're down there, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We're building something special here, and I want you to be part of it from the ground up. Let's go Steelers.